Hello, everybody, and welcome to GTFO. We're looking for some Fiddleheads today, which is quite exciting as we tramp through the woods.
So we're on a short afternoon hike on some private property. We had permission to be there. We shared some of the harvest. And out looking for fiddleheads. A nice springtime treat.
Just a bit of a disclaimer, I guess, before we really get into anything. So I'm no, biologist by any means, so I do know about fiddleheads, but also, before you go foraging for anything, I would highly recommend doing your own research and try and harvest things both safely and sustainably.
Look, Marla found a mushroom.
I did. This is a false morel. There was a bunch of those around in the springtime, not to be confused with actual morels, which have sadly evaded me on the farm. I know they're there, but I can't find them.
Oh, they'd be moose in them hills. So here we have a nice, lovely, fresh print of a young moose. The stride was a little less than 6 feet apart. Had a nice hoof on it, though. And it went that way.
Probably down towards the creek, I'm assuming.
It's a good hardwood forest. They like that. So our ideal trick for looking for fiddleheads is you try to find a patch of old dead fern, and you'll always find some young growth coming up in the middle of that. So we're just looking around for types of fern, getting closer, and then using your identifiers to see what is what.
Yeah, a real good indicator for the ostrich fern is that they will grow in groups and they'll come out from the center of the plant, whereas some other ferns just come up as a single fern. So you can see this in the video where you can find multiples in the same little plant, which is kind of nice.
This one here is a little too late to pick. You still want that fiddlehead shape at the top, and generally you don't want it much more than 6 inches or 10 centimeters long. You want it young and tender, kind of like asparagus. It is kind of like a wild asparagus flavor. Very similar cooking technique. So that one we didn't pick, as Marla gave the thumbs down to. Because we weren't making salad, we were making fiddleheads.
No. No, we were not. So here I found a little one.
So that dark green color is something you're looking for. That little brown paper texture on it is another good indicator that it's a ostrich fern, not a bracken fern. Bracken tend to be a little bit on the carcinogenic side.
Yeah, you kind of don't want to eat those ones. So it's best to sort of do some research and kind of look at pictures online as well before you go out and pick.
If you're fortunate enough to be in an area where you get cell service in the woods, then you can also look at downloading certain apps on your phone for wildlife ID. Wild edibles, right? Specifically.
So here's one we were kind of looking at that I wasn't entirely sure about, and so I think it's always kind of a good rule of thumb. If you're really not sure, don't pick it. It kind of looks like an ostrich fern, but I wasn't really sure about it, so I passed up on this one.
It does have that whiter fiddlehead tip that a bracken fern, and realistically, even as an ostrich fern, it's almost past its prime as far as being a tender, because the fiddlehead itself was quite loose and not nice and tight.
Yeah, you kind of want it more rolled up than that one was.
You'll find too, in different times of the year when you have that season rolling by for about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the area you live in, shady areas tend to bloom a little later, just like typical growth of any kind of plant. Ones that are covered up more by the dead leaves of the previous season tend to come up a little later. Sometimes you might find ones that are underneath the dead leaves and are a little tighter and tender, a little bit more moist and juicy.
More moist.
It's a good activity for taking kids on too, making sure they don't eat the stuff they harvest until you check it. And speaking of which, you shouldn't be eating these raw to begin with. This is the type of plant that needs to be boiled well, obviously for sanitary reasons, but also it helps get out some of the mild toxins they might have in them, depending what you read on your research.
Yeah, some raw fiddleheads have a tendency to give you food poisoning, so you kind of don't want that. There's some pretty good online resources for how to cook fiddleheads. I mean, we'll have a video coming up sort of telling you how to cook them, but also the government of Canada has a really good page on their website that you can look up that gives really good instructions on how to cook up fiddleheads as well.
I'm clearly here for my good looks, not my intelligence. So you can see how we're kind of intensely looking, and the additional thing we should be also pointing out here is we have our cameraman at our backs, but I'm constantly looking up and looking around too in our environment. It is springtime. There is wildlife in the woods. There is wildlife defending their young in the woods, so be cautious of moose and bear and other such things. This is late afternoon, so we're moving into a dusky period almost by the time we're done picking here. I made sure my day pack had something in it called bear spray, and that's an extra precaution I personally take. I've had some close calls. Marla found a nice bunch.
So here you can see this is a really nice cluster of them, and you can really see that like brown papery sort of thing. That's a really good indicator. And these ones are kind of about the perfect size, really. So that's a very good cluster to pick from. Whereas you can see with these ones, those aren't quite ready. They're still pretty close to the ground. So those would be up maybe in a couple of days.
Still good to mark either with a GPS, an area that you find or get lucky with, or map coordinates if you're good with map and compass. You can come back.
Or even like trail tape.
Your scouting doesn't have to be wasted. You have more efficient picking time as you come back to sites that you anticipate them to be coming into, I guess, bloom or...
unfurling, I guess.
proper harvest time would be the term.
Yeah.
Again, demonstrating that we are not biologists. You can see that deep U shape that Marla's pointing out here. That's another good indicator of an ostrich fern. Bracken are round. They don't tend to have that little gutter or groove down the inner side of the stem.
It's almost like a piece of celery, kind of. It has that sort of U shape.
It's good to bring a container. We forgot a container. Luckily, I had my canteen and cup because I was in need of coffee later, but also because we needed something to put them in.
Yeah. Once again, here was another one that we weren't entirely sure about, and I think part of the reason is this one was sort of like a singular one coming up, so I was kind of like, I'm not 100% sure about this one, so I decided to pass up on this one as well.
So you saw how full our cup was getting. It doesn't take long to come up with a half-decent harvest or portions for people. It is a good spring wild edible. Often when one fern is nearby, there's a series of them within a couple of steps. It's not hard to forage for this. It doesn't require a lot of equipment, so it's a very good beginner wild edible to start searching for.
I would say another good sort of rule of thumb for harvesting as well is maybe only take between, like, I would say 2 to 3 max ferns from each little section, because you want to leave some ferns to come up for the actual plant. So harvesting these sustainably is going to be a good idea as well. So 2 or 3 from each plant is probably good.
As you can see, they grow wonderfully in that cluster, and that's what we were after. We ended up with a good harvest.
We did have a good harvest. I made some quiche.
Stay tuned for other videos that'll indicate how to cook it.
All right. And get the fun outside, everybody.